Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. If you're a new teacher staring at a blank calendar right now, just wondering how on earth you're going to fill the next 9 months with meaningful instruction, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're treating this session as a practical workshop. The goal? To completely demystify the overwhelming task of curriculum development by looking at a classic, foundational blueprint that gives you immediate structure.
Let's be real. It's the ultimate nightmare scenario for almost every new educator, right? You walk into this totally unplanned classroom, you've got a shiny new textbook, a room full of empty desks, and literally nothing else. So how do you even tackle that kind of chaos? You've got state standards to hit, incredibly diverse reading levels to accommodate, administrators watching your every move. Do you start by planning tomorrow's activity, or maybe start with the final exam? Without a map, it is so easy to get completely lost in the day-to-day survival of teaching, just reacting to problems rather than proactively building a really solid educational experience.
Okay, let's dive into this. To find our map, we're actually going back to 1949 to an educator named Ralph Tyler. He created this deductive, linear, and sequential blueprint for curriculum design that became known as the Tyler Rationale. It's widely considered the pioneer of the technical, scientific approach to education. We often call this a product model because, well, it places a massive emphasis on the final learning outcomes, the end product of the education itself, rather than just the messy process of getting there. Basically, Tyler wanted teaching to be deliberate and highly measurable.
Here's how we're going to break it down today. 1. The curriculum blueprint. 2. Defining your educational purposes. 3. Designing and organizing experiences. 4. Evaluation and accountability. 5. The logic and purpose. And finally, 6. The missing feedback loop. We're going to translate this top-down administrative model into highly actionable steps for your own classroom.
Section 1. The curriculum blueprint, a logical, systematic framework. The absolute beauty of Tyler's model is that it gives us a really reliable, straight-line roadmap. It literally takes you all the way from massive institutional goals right down to your daily quizzes. And this brilliantly illustrates how the rationale is structured. It revolves around 4 fundamental questions that basically serve as your stages for development. Step 1 asks, what educational purposes should the schools seek to attain? Think of this as your ultimate destination. Step 2, what educational experiences can be provided to attain these purposes? These are the actual things your students are going to do. Step 3, how can these experiences be effectively organized? So the logical sequencing of your school year. And step 4, how can we determine whether these purposes are actually being attained? That's your evaluation. If you can answer these 4 questions, you've essentially built a comprehensive curriculum.
Moving right along to Section 2, defining your educational purposes. Where do goals actually come from? Let's be honest, figuring out exactly what to teach is usually the absolute hardest part for a new teacher. You can't teach everything, so how do you decide what makes the cut?
Well, Tyler argued that as planners, we have to gather data from 3 primary sources to figure out our objectives. First up, the learner. You really need to understand their specific needs and interests to keep them engaged. Second, contemporary life and society. You've got to identify what skills are actually necessary in the real world right now so your students are prepped for the job market. And third, subject matter specialists. These are the academic experts who know exactly what core knowledge is absolutely essential to master a given field.
To put that into perspective, let's look at a practical scenario. Imagine you survey your incoming students and realize, hey, they're super engaged by digital media, but they really struggle with public speaking. That is vital data from the learner. Then you look at your local community and see a high demand for workforce communication and presentation skills. That's your data from contemporary society. By just matching those 2 data points together, your educational purpose for the semester becomes incredibly clear. You need to teach digital presentation and modern public speaking skills.
But hold on, before those goals are finalized, Tyler says they must pass through 2 vital screens to ensure they actually fit your school environment. The first screen is the school philosophy. If your goal is teaching public speaking, does it align with your school's core philosophy of collaborative learning? Yes, absolutely. The second screen is the psychology of learning, meaning, is this goal developmentally appropriate? Look, expecting a high schooler to deliver a sophisticated 15-minute presentation is reasonable. Expecting a second grader to do the exact same thing? No way. The psychology of learning screen forces you to adjust that public speaking goal down to, say, a 2-minute show and tell for the younger students. Once a goal passes through both of these screens, boom, you have your concrete educational purpose.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. Designing and organizing experiences, turning goals into daily plans. Now that we have our abstract purposes locked in, we have to shift our focus to real, everyday classroom activities. This is where Tyler's academic language hits the actual practical reality of structuring your school day. So, sticking with our public speaking goal, Principle 2 says we have to select the right educational experiences to hit that mark. Silent reading? Yeah, that's not going to work. We need active experiences, maybe organizing a group debate, conducting peer interviews, or even recording a class podcast. Then, Principle 3 says we have to organize those experiences effectively. And guys, sequence matters tremendously here. You don't host the final high-stakes classroom debate on Monday before you've even taught basic research skills on Tuesday, right? You have to logically build a progressive sequence week by week so the students actually develop the skills necessary to succeed at that final task.
Section 4. Evaluation and accountability. Measuring success. Okay, you've set your goals, you've selected your activities, and you've taught the lessons. Now you have to figure out whether those educational purposes are actually being attained.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how direct it is. In Tyler's model, evaluation is an unfiltered comparison of planned outcomes versus actual results. Returning to our public speaking unit, your planned outcome, written right there in your syllabus on day 1, was that students could deliver a 5-minute speech using digital visual aids. Your evaluation is the final presentation rubric. If the rubric scores show that the majority of the class only spoke for 2 minutes and read entirely from physical index cards, well, the two sides don't match. The instructional program just wasn't effective at reaching the stated goal, and the evaluation proves it. It's beautifully simple and honestly, ruthlessly clear.
Section 5. The logic and purpose. Why this top-down approach? We've talked a lot about the what, but let's transition to the what for. Why treat the curriculum as such a strict, functioning instrument of education?
The logical purposes behind this design are actually fascinating. First, it establishes strict criteria, like why are you buying a specific expensive software program? Because it directly serves an established purpose. Second, social improvement. Tyler viewed the curriculum as a literal engine to actively refine community life, prepping students to be functional members of society. Third, administrative efficiency. This model operates brilliantly at a district level. A superintendent hands down the map to the principal, who passes it to the teacher, who efficiently executes the strategy. And finally, strict accountability. Everyone from the student all the way up to the superintendent answers to those final evaluation metrics. The whole shebang is designed for total, uncompromising organizational efficiency.
Section 6. The missing feedback loop. The critical flaw. Because as airtight as this system seems, I did promise to reveal the major limitation of Tyler's 1949 framework.
So, the crucial point is that this highly influential model is entirely linear. It marches straight from determining purposes, to planning experiences, to organizing those activities, directly into the final evaluation. And then it just abruptly stops. It hits a solid brick wall. The whole process basically ends with that final grade.
And that is the absolute danger of a straight-line roadmap. Critics point this out all the time, the lack of a feedback loop. In a real dynamic classroom, you can't just hand out a final test, record the grades, and walk away. If half your class bombs that public speaking rubric, Tyler's strict model kind of implies the unit is over because, well, you evaluated it. But a modern teacher knows better. A functioning curriculum needs to adapt. You have to take that evaluation data and use it to instantly restart the cycle. That means reteaching eye contact the very next day, tweaking your daily purposes, and adjusting your future experiences based on what the students clearly didn't grasp the first time around.
Tyler gave us an incredibly powerful, logical, linear map to get us started, which is exactly what you need when you're staring at a blank calendar. But as modern educators, you have to take it a step further. You can't just stop at the evaluation. So as you leave this workshop and head into your own classrooms, I'll leave you with this. Tyler gave us the foundation, but how will you close the feedback loop to make sure your teaching never stops evolving?